Hello everyone and welcome. Today I want to cover off finding word frequency lists and using them in a database or in conjunction with a small database. Now, I did a video previously where I discussed how you can create your own list of word frequencies from using a program called Ant and a list of books that you had which you convert to text and then do the frequencies of them. Now, you don't have to do that because many languages have a corpus already prepared, and many of them are freely available and downloadable. Now, I've personally downloaded two, one for Italian and one for French, from various universities, and they typically come in some type of database format or CSV file. And what I've done is I've imported them into SQLite. Now, I can do another video and show you how to do that, but today I just want to show you how I use the SQLite with these corpus. And what I'm going to use to show you this is the French corpus, which I downloaded from a university in France as a public domain, open source, Creative Commons sort of file. And inside of it, it lists words which were broken out by the frequency found in books and the frequency in which it appeared in films. So that's a very useful corpus, because it lets you sort of see, using the films, the slang type words that you're likely to encounter, and using the books, the more formal words that you're more likely to encounter. So let's just quickly look at this. You're going to need SQLite. Presumably you would know how to install this. SQLite is a database program which is used a lot to store data and use it in a limited way. It's not a massive database cluster like Microsoft SQL Server or Oracle. It's a small, compact database used to contain information. And SQLite is used with a lot of the apps that you're going to find nowadays that store some type of data. They tend to use SQLite. So SQLite, as the name implies, is an SQL database. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So it lets you query a database. Now, the first problem you're going to have is if you didn't create this particular database yourself, then you're not really going to know all of the table names. So a command that you might want to know is .tables. And this will just show you the tables that are inside of the database that you have. And you can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different tables within this database. Now, if I want to see what is in the table, I can do a schema view, and that'll show me how the table was created, right? So it'll also show me the columns that are in the table and whatever indexes are on the table. And this is fairly useful, although a bit verbose. So an easier way to see what is in is a pragma, and that will just give you what the columns are in the table. Now that's very useful, but if we were to do a selection query, of which this is one, so I'm selecting everything from the table Lexke where lem equals avoir limit 5. So I'm limiting the output to 5 because this could go on for quite a while. And it gives me the results, and then I can use the pragma for this table to see what it is. But this is tedious. So you can use the command turn headers on because headers are turned off by default in SQLite, which I don't know why, but they are. But if you do this and then we repeat this command, you can see that now at the top it gives the column names over the top of the columns. So headers on is a much more useful command because you don't have to run a subsequent command to try and figure out what's happening here. Now, what we're trying to do here is to see the frequency list. So if we again look at this table, and if you know a bit of French you'll be okay, but we can work out that this is the word and this is the word's gender, right? So what we can do is we can do a select statement. We don't have to select everything. We can select specific columns from the table by giving the name of the column separated by a comma, and then repeat the command with the table name. This time we won't put a condition on it. We'll just limit it to 5. So we get the first 5, and we could change that to 15 or whatever to see how many we're going to get. And if we look here, you can see that they've put in male gender. And you can do different select statements. So you can say where gender is equal to M, for example. And in fact, we don't need to limit that one. We just have a quick look at all of them. So there's a large number of them. Now, what we're trying to do here, of course, is to get the frequency list. So let's try and figure out how many are actually in there. So what we can do to try and work this out is we can do, rather than select specific tables or limit them, what we can do is we can actually do a count, and we'll use stars. So we're saying count all of the rows in this table, and what we get is 142,000 plus rows. So that's a lot of words. So what we want to do is try and work out the frequency. So if you remember, we did this and it selected a large number of them for us, and we limited it to 15. But what we can do is and we've got the count of all of them, but what we really want to see is the frequency of them. So if we now change this back to star so that we can basically get a selection, and now we're going to see the numbers at the top, we can see that we have frequency of lems in films, in books, and then a frequency in films and books of the word itself, not rather the lem, which is the condensed version of the book of the word. So what we want to use is, let's go for films. Well, no, let's do books, right? So let's select count star from this table where is greater than, I don't know, let's pick a number, 20,000. There's 3 of them. So there are 3 of them that come up more frequently than 20,000. So rather than a count, let's actually look at these 3. Now, if we look at this, we can see that la is a very frequent, as you would expect, a very frequent word which is and, is another frequent word. So what is the average frequency? Well, luckily SQL has a lot of math functions. In addition to doing count, it can do the average as well. So if we take the average of this, we can see on average of those 142,694 entries, the average frequency is 46. Well, 47 really if you round up. So if we round that up and we do a select where it's greater than 47, then we see that we restrict the list down to only 16,000. Now obviously you don't want to study 16,000, well you might, but you don't probably want to do it in a block. So let's try and increase that number to 500. Now we get a count of 1,536 word frequencies. This is probably more useful to you. So let's have a look at these words. So let's go back, and rather than do a count, let's do a select again from the two columns that we probably want in our export. And again, we'll need to do a limit on this. Now we have a problem. So it's done a select, but it's come up with the same words many times. So that 16,000 is a lot of words. Now the reason that that happens is if we go back and look at star, you see that avoir may have an entry in the other columns which are different from each other. And it does. So one's aux is in there as a verb. It's got different entries. These are actually all forms of avoir. So we don't really want that. So what is it we do want? Well, we want the lems. But we want it to be distinct. So there is a command for that in SQL called select distinct. Now here you notice it's selected the distinct for each one, but it's also made it's distinct because in the first entry gender is blank, in the second one it's male, and the third one is female. So those are distinct, so it grouped these all up at the same time. So that should be fine for us. We should be able to do that. We should also be able to pick out which one of these we may or may not want. So we might want the ortho and the lem as output, or we might not actually want the lem, although you probably do, because what you're trying to do here is, in this, this is just this word or this verb conjugated in this form. So if you want all the conjugated forms, then you probably want that. So it just depends on what it is you want to keep or learn or output. And you can output everything, in which case you just do the star. But let's use this as our example. We're gonna take this one. How do I output that as a CSV file? Because I've done the selection of what I want, and I don't want everything in this file. I just want to output a CSV file, which I can then import into Anki or some flashcard program, or I can put it into Excel and manipulate it in some other way, shape, or form. Well, what you can do, it's relatively straightforward to output. You put mode CSV. There are different modes, but assuming you want to load this into a spreadsheet or into some flashcard program, typically CSV is the format that they want. And then you tell it the name of the file you want to output it to. In this case, I'm going to output it to one that's French frequency greater than 500. And then I just need to run my select statement. Now this select statement needs to run without a limit because you want to get all of them. Now in theory that's done, and to see we just type .quit and that will quit us out of SQLite, and we can see that it has created the file that I wanted. So if we just dump that file to the screen, you can see that it's output all of that as a CSV file. So we can look at it in Excel, or in my case LibreOffice. I'm going to import it. It's comma delimited space. It has a string as the delimiter. This looks fine, so we'll do, it's first column is that, so we want, there we go. And so it's picked it up and brought it in to a spreadsheet. Now from here we can do all kinds of clever sorting and other things, and imports and exports into various other programs. And you can see that we've got 255, and this is more likely because we selected distinct and it's reduced it down from the 1600 lines that we had before down to 200. So you can manipulate this database and change things around and do as you please in order to get the frequency words. To find a list of frequency words, the easiest way to do this, I've found, is to simply Google for corpus, whatever the language is, French, and download. That generally will return some results, and you'll have to look around to find a corpus that's freely available and Creative Commons license, etc. But it's relatively straightforward. If you cannot find anything, then try the same search but in the language in which you want. So if you're searching for French, go to Google Translate, translate those words into French, and then pop that into your search criteria. But either way, you'll generally find frequency lists, corpus, any of those sorts of keywords will help you find them. And typically university sites will be the best for this. So if Google turns a result back for some university in a target language country, try and go there first, because those will be the ones you want. Alright, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll try and answer them in the comments, or I'll create another video to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.